25 to 11. Your view, is it right for the Australian Open tennis to take action against the protesters protesting about Peng Shuai, saying, where is Peng Shuai, the Chinese tennis player who has all but disappeared since making allegations against a party official? Well, in the first half hour of the program, I spoke to one of the protesters. He said they were attempting to raise $10,000 on a GoFundMe page so they could give out 1,000 of these T-shirts at the finals of the Australian Open, encouraging people to wear them. I think they'll get them to wear them under jumpers and things, and when the game starts, take their jumpers off. Which, if they can get 1,000, the logistics won't allow the tennis people to check them, I wouldn't think. Is it fair enough? I mean, the Open did ban Serbian flags and things at one stage, but is this a political statement, or is it a human rights statement? Certainly the Australian Open people are very sensitive. Their major sponsor is a company called 1573, a brewery. They've put in, we're told, about 100 million over 5 years. They're trying to build tennis audience in China, and it won't help if you've got pictures of these sort of protests going everywhere at the tennis. But there are other issues too. I read today that athletes going to the Beijing Winter Olympics have been told to take burner phones, not to take their own phones or they'll be hacked into. Had my own experience there years and years ago where it was clear that they were monitoring what we were doing and controlling what we did online. And the Prime Minister has had his Chinese social media found effectively taking over, used for propaganda, the WeChat account. Why on earth would you have a WeChat account? Anyway, it's beyond me. Senator James Paterson is chair of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security with strong views on this. James Patterson, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
What do you think of the protest at the tennis? Should that be acceptable or not?
Well, I'm incredibly cynical about the motives of Tennis Australia here, who have told us that their number one priority is Peng Shuai's health and well-being, and at the same time they're banning people from wearing T-shirts that express concern about her welfare and well-being. I think it's entirely appropriate for people to raise that concern, as many leading tennis players have, who are playing in the Australian Open, have done, and I think it's inappropriate for Tennis Australia to say this is a political issue. There's nothing political about an alleged sexual assault. It's a criminal matter and it should be investigated, and Peng Shuai's welfare should be guaranteed.
So you don't accept the assurances that she's okay and quite happy with life?
No, I'm just like everyone else independent who's observed this. I have no confidence in those assurances that appear to resemble hostage videos, not genuine expressions of her own well-being.
So you wouldn't see a problem with people going to the finals wearing T-shirts?
In fact, I'd encourage them to do so, Neil. I think it's an entirely appropriate thing to do in a free country like Australia, to express our sincere and genuine concern over the welfare of an athlete.
You would encourage them to do so. If we had 1,000 people sitting in the main court for the final all showing that T-shirt, China wouldn't be very happy.
No, they might not be, but we're a free country, Neil, and we don't decide what we do here based on whether other countries are happy or unhappy with us for doing it.
Okay, that's one issue. What about the Prime Minister's WeChat account?
Yeah, for background for your listeners, Neil, WeChat is the most widely used social media and news service in Australia among the Chinese Australian community. We think there's about 1 million active users in Australia, so it's the best way for an Australian politician to communicate to the Chinese Australian community, particularly in the lead up to an election later this year. It appears that WeChat has taken away the Prime Minister's access to his account and now handed it over to someone else who's using it instead, and they have ignored an appeal from the government to restore the Prime Minister's access. This is pretty clearly and transparently an attempt by the Chinese Communist Party to censor the Australian Prime Minister and prevent him from campaigning to the Chinese Australian community. And it's particularly worrying because they haven't done the same to the opposition leader, Anthony Albanese, who has been freely posting attacks on the government over the recent months.
Really? So Anthony Albanese's got an account, which they haven't touched, but they've nobbled the Prime Minister?
Exactly right. And so the government can't effectively respond to the political attacks that Anthony Albanese has made on this platform to us. And that's totally inequitable in an election year. And I think it constitutes foreign interference in our democracy, which is why I'm calling for all Australian politicians to boycott the platform. And I'd like to see Anthony Albanese show some leadership here, take a bipartisan stand in the national interest and say he won't be posting on a platform that bans the Australian Prime Minister.
Well, that'd be a fair thing to do. If that has happened, as you say, the fair thing for him to do would say, all right, I'm not going to be part of that. I'm out.
I would think so. We'll wait and see what he says.
Okay, the other thing is, I don't know why you'd be on WeChat. I guess, as you say, you can get a political message out, but the Chinese people know what it's about. I mean, they're very careful with it because they know if they say the wrong thing, they get a knock on the door.
That's right, Neil. I mean, WeChat is one of the primary electronic means that the Chinese Communist Party uses to monitor and control the Chinese diaspora overseas. WeChat is ostensibly owned by a private company, Tencent, but it is effectively controlled and operated by the Chinese Communist Party, and it has a long history of censoring content and of spying on people through the platform. Unfortunately, though, China makes it very difficult for people in Australia to communicate with their family and friends back home other than by using WeChat, and increasingly they're making it difficult to transfer money back home other than by using WeChat. So it's an all-encompassing platform. They're effectively forcing everyone in the Chinese diaspora to use it so they can control them on it.
Do you have any concerns about TikTok as well?
Yeah, I do have some concerns about TikTok as well. TikTok is owned by another large Chinese multinational called ByteDance, and it has had a dispute with the Chinese government a few years ago about censorship. And as a result of that dispute, the CEO of ByteDance put out a statement saying that he would ensure that all content on their platform would uphold the Chinese Communist Party's values and message all around the world. And so I don't have any confidence that what is posted on TikTok can be done in a censorship-free way, and I am concerned about possible surveillance on that platform as well.
Just reports today too that the athletes going to Beijing have been told to take a burner phone rather than their own phones because they'll be hacked.
Yes, that's exactly right. They shouldn't take any electronic device that they use in Australia or that they intend to bring back with them into Australia and use again, because we think it's virtually certain that they'll be compromised while they're in China. That's the consistent advice that's been given to Australian politicians and business leaders for many years when travelling to China, and unfortunately it applies equally to athletes. Unfortunately, the international Olympic community hasn't been able to guarantee the complete safety and welfare of our athletes while they're over there.
All right, so why are we going to Beijing?
Well, I was one of the people that called for a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. I think it would have been inappropriate for any Australian politician or diplomat to attend, and I'm very pleased the Prime Minister has agreed and announced that we are diplomatically boycotting the Olympics. I think it's a choice for individual athletes whether they want to go. I wouldn't seek to ban them from going, but I want to make sure they understand all the risks in going and understand it's highly likely that they'll be used for propaganda purposes while they're there.
Why wouldn't we boycott it?
Well, some of these athletes have trained their whole lives, and this might be their only opportunity to compete, and I understand why it's important for them to go and why they want to participate, but they should just be very mindful of what the consequences are of participating. If they were to stage in any kind of protest while they were there, there'd be very grave risks to their safety and well-being, as the organising committee in Beijing said only a few weeks ago.
Why are you probably the only outspoken voice in the federal government about this?
Oh, look, I've got a number of other colleagues who share my concerns, some of whom are vocal like I am about it, and others who are a bit more strategic about it because of the positions that they hold. But I've just seen over the last couple of years that the Chinese government has mistreated Australia and Australians, and it doesn't diminish in any way my admiration for the Chinese people. But the Chinese Communist Party is a revisionist regime that is rising power, and they're trying to change the world order in their favour. And if they're successful in doing so, it'll be to the detriment of Australia and other countries that share our values.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for talking to us. Senator James Patterson, Chair of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. You might remember James, he was a regular on this program before he went into Parliament. He's certainly taking a strong line on that. He's encouraging people to wear protest T-shirts to the finals of the Australian Open. Encouraging people to do it. Would you do it? Whether you're going or not, would you support it? Would you wear one if you are going or if you're not going? That's, he's encouraging. If you've got 1,000 people turning up with those shirts hidden and they suddenly expose it, it's going to be uncontrollable for the Australian Open people.